Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fighting and Finance podcast. I'm your host, Parsa Vahid. I am here with Neil Magny, who just so happens to be the most winningest welterweight of all time in the UFC. Quite an accomplishment. My man, thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it.
No problem. It's a pleasure to be here. I seen the interview with Corey, and I was like, all right, cool. This is awesome. I want to be a part of that.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, Corey was very gracious. It's funny because originally I'm just a random guy, right? So I reached out to Corey via Instagram. No response. He's got, 250,000 followers. I don't expect it. But then I started to get close to some of his friends, and I was like, hey, man, do you mind asking Corey if he can be on the podcast? He's never met me, but...
Yeah.
And it was just after his fight. I totally get it. He very respectfully reached out and said, hey, man, just not a good time. And me being the persistent motherfucker that I am, I just kept asking. And eventually he came on. So Corey, if you're watching, thank you so much. But thank you as well.
No problem.
I want to start out with just that most recent fight with Daniel Rodriguez. So I rewatched it before you came. And I was watching it live. And I'm not sure if you know, I'm not even an amateur fighter. I'm like below amateur, but I love fighting. And I just went to spar last weekend, actually, at Hima. But what I noticed about that fight is he's a southpaw, right?
Yeah.
He was throwing that straight left kind of at your chest.
Yeah.
And kind of backing you up. You handle the pressure very well. But being in there, I've never experienced that. I just want to know what it feels like to be in there, having someone kind of throw the straight that's hitting you in the chest. And how do you kind of react to that?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about that fight is like he did some things really, really well. Like I'm sure he was throwing that straight left to my chest because he knew the head move was going to be there. I was like kind of move my head off center where he wouldn't necessarily like land that shot. Had been aiming for my head, so he knew that my torso would be a bigger target area for him to hit. So he's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna throw this punch towards his chest. And sure enough, it did just that. There was sometimes like he was aiming towards my chest and hit me in the shoulder. I was like, oh, wait, like that's a weird place to get hit. It kind of feels funny. But it was more so just to kind of like minimize the movement from your opponent. And it kind of worked out really well for him initially. And I was like, all right, cool. Just have to keep moving and stay on the outside of his strikes and find my way to like engage him, whatever. And by midway through the first round, I feel like I got it down pretty good where I was like avoiding most of his shots and that kind of thing. And then the second round, he comes out and he's like, all right, now I'm going to take this straight left and put it on his chin. And he's like landing this jab during the fight. I'm just like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not supposed to hit me. Like, you're aiming for my chest before. And I felt like I figured that out. And he made that mid-fight adjustment. I was just like, wow, like, what is he doing here now? And I'm like in the moment trying to figure out how to like, counter this southpaw's jab that's like landing on me over and over and over again. And like I just caught myself thinking too much about what he's doing. And I forgot my own offense for a bit. And before I know it, he was like pretty much tagging me up that second round and getting the best of it. So by the third round, I was like, all right, you know what? Like he's gonna throw that jab, go ahead and point your head and move forward and just find a way to like get the fight back going in your direction. And I was able to do just that in the third round where I just kind of came forward a lot more aggressive where it kind of eliminated the need for him to try to use that jab because it wasn't as effective in close range. And once we got to like clinch position, I was like, all right, cool, this is my fight. I can take it over now.
I remember going into the third, actually coming out of the third, Cody, I've had Cody on the podcast as well, your coach, was fucking animated and was trying to rile you up because that second round definitely didn't go your way. But it goes to show your veteran, your craftiness, because it takes a lot for you to be able to adjust and come out in the third round and listen to direction. And you look like a completely different fighter in that third round. You were putting it on him, whereas a minute prior, it didn't look like that.
For sure.
What do you attribute that to? Is it the coaching or is it just your veteran craftsmanship?
Man, I think it comes down to a combination of it all. Like coaching is definitely a huge part of it. I mean, with the guys in my corner, like Christian and Cody, like I have a relationship with these guys where it's like, whatever they tell me, I just go out there and do. It's almost like being a soldier and getting your orders. Like there's no arguing about like, I don't think I want to deploy just there. Let me go here instead. It's like, no, there goes your orders. You go out there and get it done. And I feel like that's when I operate best is when my coaches and I are in sync with one another. Where if my coach tells me, hey, I need you to run headfirst to that brick wall, I'm not even think twice about it. I'm going to start running headfirst to that brick wall until he stops me. Oh, no. I was just joking. Don't actually hit yourself on that wall. But I feel like I need to be dialed in my coaches there where I can trust them and believe in what they're telling me to do and what they're seeing on the outside of the cage. So when Cody and Christian came in there and they're like, hey, we want to see you do this, or we want to see more output from you. We want to see whatever it is that they were saying in the corner at that time. It was easy to make that adjustment because there was no more thinking. I wasn't thinking about like, how do I counter his jab? How do I counter this? How do I do that? My coaches just told me, hey, go out there and do this. And I just focus on doing that particular thing. And that what ultimately led to me getting the victory.
And why did you have Drew Dober in your corner?
Man, Drew Dober's just a great friend and great support. I mean, he's a softball fighter as well. And then the biggest thing is just like having a training partner that you can like drill with and go over technique with, where the coach can still be on the outside watching. So during fight week, even though you're not training as intense, it is good to kind of have like a training partner you can like move around with, wrestle with, strike with at a lighter pace in order to help you get prepared for the fight.
Is he always in your corner, or was that one of the first times he was there?
One of the first times in a while, I think. I can't remember which other fight he was, but I had him in my corner another time. But usually it's either Austin Hubbard, Drew Dober, or Bojan Velikovic who are my corner. Yeah. And just kind of that same thing where it's like you have a training partner to kind of like be your support system, so to speak. Like if you're just laying there and you're kind of freaking out with all these thoughts about the fight, you have someone you can kind of talk to. Like, hey, man, I'm antsy. I don't know why. And like you have someone to kind of like take that stress with. Like, hey, let's go watch a movie. Let's go talk about this or whatever it may be. Where you're not necessarily over thinking about the fight. You're more so like in this like laid back, chilled atmosphere, just like you are day to day at the gym.
You know, it's funny. When Cody was on, I was very interested in the cornering aspect, and I was really diving in deep on, you know, what makes a good corner? How do you corner? And he said something that I think panned out in your situation, and that was, you know, when you're cornering someone, you may be seeing something and you may be blind to other things, whereas the other two cornermen may be able to pick up on that. So it's a kind of a very fine balance of when to chime in, when to allow another cornerman to coach or to give direction. Yeah. And I'm starting to really notice how important corners are for fighters, because if you get poor direction, and I won't name names, but I think there's a very famous fight. I won't name names, but it was just bad cornering. I think it was horrible cornering, and I think that's the reason why the athlete lost. Yeah. You, in my opinion, and I've been around some fairly big gyms in my day, you've got Christian and Cody fucking badass coaches. If you didn't have them, do you think that your career would have been as successful as it has been?
It's one of those things like depending on who you talk to, like an athlete is a special athlete and they're able to like take their career very, very far. But like how the journey played out is what the coach is there for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure if I ended up at, I don't know, I don't want to name another gym and get them like Jackson's MMA. Okay. If I ended up at Jackson's MMA, I'm sure they had a good group of coaches there that would be able to get me so far in my career. And like my willingness, eagerness, and like just like love for the sport would have carried me very far. But I think the coaches are a huge point as far as like forcing you to dig deeper and bring something else out of you. Like when I first started working with Cody, for example, he had this weird analogy where he would like kind of use like comic book.
He loves those.
Yeah, he used comic books to kind of describe like my fighting style and things that I was doing. Like I remember one analogy he used where it's like, Neil, when I look at you, I think of Batman going into a fight with 10 utility belts on. Like you don't need 10 utility belts for a fight. You need one, maybe two. Right. Like so now when you get ready for a fight and I'm in your corner, let's focus on what utility belt you need to bring to that fight. That's help you be as best prepared for that particular opponent. So if I'm fighting a soft fight, I don't need to have 20 different things I can do well. I need to have a couple things I do well against this particular type of opponent and focus on those things in training camp. And I think that's what a good coach does. And the other part is just that trust in knowing that they have your best interest at heart, where whatever happens, win, lose, or draw, they're in it with you for the long haul. And you guys are going to keep growing, keep getting better for it. I mean, Christian and I have traveled to probably 12 different countries now for fighting, and each journey, each trip was completely different from the last. And when it's all said and done 20 years from now, like those experiences with those men is what I can draw back on. Like, man, that was great. Because like, be honest with you, at 30 fights into the UFC now, I can't remember half of them. And it's not because of like concussion or anything like that. It's just kind of like it's a bit of a blur. It came and went so quick that I can't remember half those fights that I've had. But the experience that I had in every single fight week with every single coach, every single training partner I went with, I can tell you from beginning to end how that fight week played out. And those are like those long lasting memories that stick around long after fighting is over.
What a call out, by the way, at the end, your speech. I wasn't expecting Gilbert Burns, and I didn't even know he had a potential opponent. But do you know who that opponent is that he's?
Yeah, this mystery opponent. That's $1 million question right now.
Nobody
Who's this
Who could it be?
opponent? I mean,
when is that card, by the way? The real
that's
card?
January 21st.
Could Bilal be his opponent? Jorge?
Potentially. I mean, and this is one of those hard things. It's like you try to play in your mind, like, all right, cool. What is the potential match that could lead up to that fight or whatever? And like you go through the entire roster as far as like the guys that are ranked at least, and they're like, maybe this one, and you start looking like who's injured, who's coming up a loss, who's available, who's this, who's that, and I'm looking at it, I'm just like, yes, nothing's adding up.
Not a lot of options, right?
Yeah, not many options.
That's
there.
a quick turnaround for you, but you love to stay active, and a lot of fighters don't, which I respect. But I love the fact that you're super active. Do you purposely do that? Do you just like to be active? If you're not injured, you just want to fight, or?
Yeah, is this just carrying that momentum? Like even after my last fight, for example, I mean, if you go back and watch the film of it, I got the submission win, and I just kind of walked over and kind of gave him his time to do his thing, and it wasn't like this big celebration, like, oh yeah, hell yeah. I just submitted D-Rod. Let's go into the next one. Not to take anything away from D-Rod, he's a great opponent. He definitely showed his heart, showed his skill set in that fight. But at the end of the day, like that's not the end goal for me. Like you know what I mean? Like the championship is the end goal for me, and I need to make sure I'm always taking a step forward in that direction. So even though I appreciated and enjoyed what happened in that moment with being D-Rod, I know what the bigger picture is down the road, and I want to get back to pursuing that. So like once I got home and the dust kind of settled a bit, I wanted to get right back in the gym and keep moving forward, keep climbing the ranks, and keep moving forward towards my own goals.
You're fucking durable, man. You know, fighting as often as you do. I mean, I am not an athlete. I mean, obviously I'm not an athlete, but I like to train. I was very athletic in my early years, and sports have always been huge. But I know my body's just not built like an athlete's body in terms of injury. Every time I try to push myself, if I spar too hard, I'll break a rib, I'll break a nose. You know, I'm fragile, and I'm honest with myself about that. You have this durability about you. Is that something that you work on, or are you just blessed with?
I mean, I think that comes down to like, again, lean on the coaches again. And when I first came out to Colorado, for example, I was very fortunate to work with Lauren Landau for a bit. And he was
just at Landau this morning.
Nice. And I spent like the first 7-8 years working with him and working with him directly. And Lauren was kind of like in tune with his athletes. Like you walk through the door, he's already assessing you. He's already looking like, all right, is this guy leaning to the left? Is he doing this? He's doing that. He's already assessing the athlete as you're walking in through the door. And his job was like not only make you a better athlete, but also make sure that you were healthy. So he would like kind of plug in different exercises and things like that in his programming to help you like minimize or avoid certain injuries. So if I walked in and he noticed that like I was favoring one leg or the other because of an injury or a potential injury, he'll focus in on whatever that was in order to like make sure I was balanced and make sure that my body was functioning the way that I was supposed to. Since then, he took a job with the Broncos, and I don't get to train them as often. But now my strength conditioning coach being Vinny Lopez, he kind of steps up and does the same thing, and like he has Lauren as a mentor for a guy who he got to train alongside and learn from over the years. So now that I'm training with Vinny Lopez, it's the same idea where Vinny can kind of gauge what it is I need to do or not do that week. So if I come in on a Wednesday morning and I had a hard Tuesday night the night before, he knows how hard to push on that Wednesday morning to not overdo it where I can potentially either overtrain or lead to an injury or whatever. And I think that's super important because as an athlete, my job is to just go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to take my body and like literally try to break it. I need to push it to its limits and be like, oh my God, like this thing needs maintenance. This thing needs to be prepared. And as coaches, their job is to kind of like manage that this body, so to speak, manage it, how much output I'm getting, how much recovery I'm getting, how much sleep I'm getting, what is my nutrition like, and all that other stuff. And I think that's what leads to like being able to compete as often at high level. Is just like figuring out the recovery piece, the training piece, and all the other stuff that goes into it. And for me, it's key to not only listen to your body, but also listen to the guys around you who are able to tell you like, hey, that's enough. There are some days I go spar. I'm sparring 8 rounds that day. But then having a coach say, hey, you're fighting a 3-round fight, 5-round fight at most. We don't need you doing 8-10 rounds today. We need you doing 3 rounds or 4 rounds or 5 rounds, and that's it. We're going to cut it off. And those guys kind of hold me accountable or hold me to that, where it's like, hey, Neil, you're done. I'm like, no, one more round. Like, no, you're done. Like, you did your 3 rounds today. You're done. Go recover, get ready for the next training session. And that also adds to the recovery and the durability as well.
I've noticed it in myself as well. I actually just I met Aaron Porter through Rich. I have this nagging lower back injury, and I've gone to, I think, 3 different doctors now, and they all say you have to get surgery. I've got L3, L4, spinal stenosis, just a fucked up back. And I don't want to get surgery. I'm 37. You know, I just don't want back surgery right now. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to invest a decent amount of my money into PT, strength and conditioning, this and that. And it's paid off. It's been maybe 2 months I've been at Lando. My core is much stronger. I've lost some weight. I feel stronger. I can lift my babies without, you know, the next day my back being fucked up. And so I'm starting to realize that you have to invest in the recovery and the strength as much as you do pushing your body to try to break it. You got to recover it just as much as you try to break it.
Yeah.
With that being said, I mean, would you be able to fight in January just coming off?
100%.
Yeah.
100% ready to go. I actually immediately came back from Vegas and not even wasting any time, went to the passport office the next day to like extradite my passport to get renewed.
Wow.
Like when I...
So you won on that card.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like literally the only way I'm not getting on that card is if Gilbert Burns has an opponent or says no. Other than that, I'm literally trying to fight as soon as possible.
I would love to see you in Rio. I'm just, fuck, who would he be fighting and why would he be so cryptic about it? I guess you have to be if they haven't made it official, right?
I mean, to a certain extent, but like I said, I mean, I don't want to be a guy that's like nitpicking. If he has an opponent, great. I mean, I wish him the best. I want him to focus on that particular opponent. But for my own selfish reasons, I can't help but want that fight. But like I said, if he actually,
that would be huge for you. Sorry to cut you off, but that would be huge because what is he, number 3?
Top 5 for sure.
Top 5, yeah, that would propel you. He's a dog. I would love to watch that fight, especially in Rio.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But if that doesn't come to fruition, who else is on your radar?
Literally any single person on the roster at this point. I mean, and that's the thing that makes it difficult because like over the years, I always thought it was like, number 5 guy fights number 6 guy. Like I always thought it was like a systematic thing to it when it came to like who's fighting who next. But the reality of it is like it never guarantees. I mean, look at Leon Edwards' path to the title, for example. The guy was on a 9-fight win streak where he should have arguably have gotten a title shot a lot sooner, but for whatever reason, it didn't come through. He had to fight back a few times. At one point, he fought Nate Diaz, who wasn't ranked at all. And then he took another random fight against Bilal, who's ranked number 13 or 12 at the time that they fought. So like, there's all these different things that come into play where no one knows what the perfect recipe is to go out there and get a title shot. Only thing I do know is winning leads to guys getting a title shot. I want to be in a position to go out there and win and perform well. I mean, like a guy like Jorge Masvidal before his fight with Darren Till, he was a guy who was riding I believe a 2-fight losing streak. Had a couple wins at welterweight, but also was struggling at lightweight, which is why he went out to welterweight. And then he went out there and had 2 back-to-back great performances, and now he's one of the most sought-after fighters in the division. And I just kind of look at like that potential, like, you know what I mean? I look at the opportunities that are available with me going out there and performing. I mean, if I go out there and whoever I UFC puts again, if I go out there and perform to the best of my ability, get another finish, make it something memorable, I'm sure I won't have to ask for a top 5 opponent next. It'll be given to me.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So for me, Gilbert Burns would be great. If not, give me the next person to go out there and perform against.
Nice. And you were the only motherfucker that was asking for Khamzat when, before he had fought some of the bigger names, before he even got to Gilbert Burns. No one wanted to fight him, but you were like, fucking give me that fight. And that you earned so much respect with like the casual fans, the diehard fans like myself. You're just willing to fight. Like, who was that before D-Rod? You fought, what's the guy's name? Kasra?
Shavkat.
Shavkat. No one wanted to fight him either, but you took that fight. Do you have like a team that says to you and sits you down and says, listen, man, this is not the right fight for you right now at this time? Or do you just, you get to choose who you want to fight?
Yeah. So I don't work well with managers. Like, I've been a professional for, almost 13 years now. And during that time, I've had maybe 2 managers, and it just long-term it didn't work out well. It was just it was different between what I wanted for myself and what they envisioned for me. And I just kind of wanted to keep pursuing greatness, keep pursuing my career or whatever. And it just never worked out with me. I mean, and one of the biggest reasons I think I became that was like when I was in the Army, like, it was explained to me early on that like you're responsible for your own career. Like, yeah, you're gonna have a squad leader, you're gonna have a platoon sergeant, you're gonna have all these other people who you're gonna have to like kind of answer to or submit paperwork to or rely on to get things done for you. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for your career. So when it came time for me to start mixed martial arts and be a professional at it, I had the same approach. Like, I appreciate everyone who has input in my career, the coaches, the management I got to work from time to time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for my career. Yeah. If I don't get as far as I want to go in the UFC, it's not because of the management team, it's because of me. If I don't get what I want out of the sport when it's all said and done, I can't blame anyone else for it except for myself. And I feel like that's just the recipe or model that works for me.
What were they charging? 10, 20, 15?
I think the standard fee for managers like 10% or something like that. And honestly, it wasn't even about the money. It was more so just like wanting to be able to like believe in myself and bet on me every single time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I fought Hector Lombard, for example, when that fight offer came through, there wasn't much excitement or enthusiasm from my coaches. I remember saying, "Hey, I got to fight, guys. I'm fighting Hector Lombard." And my coach's reaction kind of like, "Oh, yeah, great. You're fighting Hector. Let's, yeah, man, let's get you ready for it." And I'm sitting there looking around like, what's the hesitation for? Like, this, just a guy. Like, we're going to go out there and fight this dude. Like, why are you guys hesitating? So when it comes to like management or wanting my career to go as far as it could be, I just want to be accountable. I want to make sure I know like I've gotten as far as I could go doing everything I could for myself, and I can't blame anyone else for any shortcomings or anything I did come to fruition.
But don't you also see the value in maybe it could be manager or coach to sit you down and say, "Hey, listen, this is not a good fight at this time for these reasons. And, you know, put your ego aside. And you want to be a champion one day, but let's think of this long term." Do you have anyone that kind of sits you down, and if they would you even just tell them go fuck themselves? Like, you're gonna fight who you want?
I'm very respectful. I probably wouldn't tell them to go after themselves right away, but it might come across something that way. But like, you look at every great athlete, they always want to go out there and challenge themselves against the best guys out there. So even the Shopcard fight or whatever, like, I had so many personal things going around that fight where it probably wasn't a good time for me to take that fight. But I still believed in me. I still believe I can get it done. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to go out there and despite the odds, get it done. And more times than not, that mindset had worked out for me where I can remember 2 fights in particular where I had food poisoning and I was just like, all right, here we are. I have to fight today. I don't have another choice. I'm going to go out there and do it. I had a fight where I had a torn meniscus. I had another fight, 2 fights where I had a broken hand or whatever. And I went out there and performed. And the crazy thing about it, I've won all those fights. So, you know what I mean? It literally twice with food poisoning, twice with a broken hand, once with a torn meniscus. I won all those fights and looked great doing it. Where if I had a manager necessarily or someone who made that call for me, they're like, hey, that's not the call. My client has food poisoning. When you get him to the hospital today, you can't fight. And I would have missed out on a great opportunity or a great moment for that or whatever. And I just feel like for my mental and to bring out the best in me, having that control of being able to, like, I don't have a backup. I don't have a guy that can sub in for me. I don't have a guy that can say, hey, I'm calling off today, have someone else go to the office and get the work done. I don't have that option. So like taking that pressure, I feel like brings out the best in me every single time. Got it.
Well, it's proved to work out for you, obviously. You know, one thing that I think of as just a casual, I don't want to call myself a casual fan, as a diehard fan, is the fighter benefits and the fighter pay and the fighter insurance stuff. And we talked about it off air, but I really want to know from your perspective, you are one of the top welterweights in the world. You are literally the most winningest UFC welterweight of all time. However, I look at it and I get angry on your behalf because I'm thinking, and I don't know exactly how much you guys get paid. I have a very good idea, but I think it's drastically too low. For what you guys go through. And then coupled with the fact that you guys don't have any benefits. You are one of the few fighters who gets paid very well relative to the other fighters. But do you feel in your heart of hearts that the UFC is paying you guys fair?
At the end of the day, like the idea of like whether or not it's fair, it's always like relative to what you're comparing it to. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I compare our pay to the NFL guys, NBA guys, then it's like, yeah, sure, it's not fair. If I compare it to WNBA or some soccer leagues or whatever, it's like, okay, it's fair. Like, you know what I mean? So fair is kind of relative to like how you look at it or whatever. But one of the biggest things that like holds in my opinion, holds back the potential earnings for other MMA fighters is one, other fighters.
Yeah.
Two, just the like this crabs in a barrel mentality where fighters feel like if this person gets a bigger slice of the pie, that means I'm getting less. And that's not the case at all. You see it with Sage Northcutt. When Sage Northcutt first came to UFC, he was one of those guys, like a standard contract for an individual going from a regional circuit to UFC, you'll get paid from anywhere from $10,000 to show, $10,000 to win. That was like standard about 5 years ago when Sage Northcutt
like
first.
12 and 12 now? Or
Now it's probably up to like 12 and 12, maybe 14 and 14. Okay. But back when Sage Northcutt first got to UFC, it was about 10 and 10. This guy entered the UFC, was getting paid about $80,000 to show, $80,000 to win. And the biggest complaints about how much he was getting paid was from other fighters.
Sure.
Like, why is he getting paid that? I deserve this. I deserve that. And it's like, that's the problem. Like you're minimizing this guy's ability to go out there and be marketable, go out there and earn and say to a company like, hey, this is my value, this is my worth, pay me this amount. You're minimizing by saying like, oh, no, he doesn't deserve that, pay him less. And that becomes the problem when it comes to mixed martial arts, where it's like, rather than like making a new standard for what someone else is earning, there's too many fighters that kind of try to pull away from what someone else is doing. Like you see the Conor McGregor effect.
Yeah.
Every single fighter on the roster right now wants to fight Conor McGregor. Why? Because of what Conor McGregor brings to the table as far as like marketing and all that kind of stuff. And like that's not the goal for fighters. And it shouldn't be the goal for fighters. It's like, hey, how do I elevate myself to the point that I can go to a company and say like, hey, I'm worth X amount of dollars, pay me X amount of dollars. And where you feel content, like, all right, cool. I feel like I got paid fairly or what my value is worth or whatever, and you feel okay going home. But too often it's like, oh no, that guy deserves that, pay him less, and that becomes a problem with it. And the other issue is there's no standard for MMA, and now you can see it for combat sports in general, where literally in order for you to play in the NFL, for example, you have to like be really, really good at high school, and then take it to the next level and be really good at a particular college. And even then, you have to go to a combine and perform well there.
Yeah.
Like you have to be able to bench for a certain amount. You have to be able to run a certain speed. You have to be able to jump a certain height, whether it's a broad jump or a vertical. You have to be able to do all these different things to say like, hey, I'm an NFL athlete. Look at the standard. MMA and combat sports doesn't have that. You literally can go to an urgent care, take a physical, like, hey, I'm a pro fighter now. Here's my paperwork. And that's the problem. Like, you know what I mean? There's no standard with it where you have one individual can go out there and knock out 10 people who probably should have been in the cage in the first place. And like on his record, it says like, hey, 10 first round KO wins. This guy's the man. And you have another guy who's probably 8-2, but he fought very tough competition. Sure. And he probably has 5 decision wins, 3 finish wins, but he's fought very tough competition. Exactly. But the general audience doesn't see the difference between the two. They see the one guy who's knocking out a bunch of tomato cans and one guy who's like 8-2, a couple decisions, like, hey, pay this guy who's 10-0, a lot more than you're paying this guy that's 8-2. They don't see the hard work that goes into it. They don't see a guy that's been training 10 years of kickboxing and a guy that's been training boxing for 2 years. They don't see a difference. They see 2 guys in there slugging it out, and hopefully someone gets knocked out or someone gets bloody. And that creates another issue in there where you don't need to have like this defined finished product in a fighter in order to sell fights. You know what I mean? And that creates a problem with fighters too now, where it's like a lot of people can't tell a guy's been for 10 years from a guy's been for 2 years. And that makes it hard to like want to justify, in some people's cases, wanting to pay this guy more. I don't agree with it, but that is the reality of combat sports today, where nothing against the Jake Paul and Logan Paul brothers, but you look at those 2 guys that were able to use marketing to make a name for themselves in the sport of boxing. And there are other boxers who fought in Olympics, fought in all these in Golden Gloves, who aren't making what these guys are making, but they're able to market themselves and sell themselves at a higher value or higher dollar amount than other people are. And I think that's what it comes down to fighter pay increase. And like 2 things have to happen. Fighters have to get behind one another and support one another. If you see a guy doing well, make that the standard, make that the go-to. Like, hey, that should be the new minimum. That should be the new thing. That should be the new this. Where not necessarily like, hey, that guy's getting paid way too much. You should pay me half to do it because I want the job. No other industry does that. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're in a construction field and someone calls you out to like do a drywall job, for example, and they say like, hey, for me to lay this drywall, it's going to take me X amount of hours, X amount of days. This is the amount for it. And someone walks in and says like, hey, I'll do it for half.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often. Like, you know what I mean? Because they know the amount of work that goes into getting that finished product. And I feel like that's one of the things that happens in mixed martial arts right now. There's too many people willing to go out there and do it subpar for a lower amount. And the general audience can't tell the difference between the two at times.
You're absolutely right. And we are back. Sorry about that. We had a little technical issue. But you mentioned Jake Paul. And I mentioned to you that I'm in contact with the Jake Paul team. And we're trying to put together an association. And a couple years ago, I looked into putting a fighters association together. And I did a lot of research on whether we should do a fighters union, why a union wouldn't work, whereas an association would work. And then when I had people like Cody on, things that I would ask is, why don't you think the fighters band together and create an association? It's exactly what you just said, where someone will come in and will do it for, you know, a lower pay or whatever. So I said a couple years ago, and it's been on record, that they need to create a slush fund. And that fund would essentially tell all the fighters, we're putting your fight career on pause right now. This is how I think it will work, and the only way that I think it will work in order to help fighters get better benefits. Because obviously you're going up against the UFC, and that's technically, it's not your employer, but it's you know, where your revenue is coming from. So you don't want to upset them. But if I were to look at it, this is how I think it should be done. You say to all fighters, all fighters band together and say, we are not fighting anymore until you come to the negotiating table and we get either a better pay or better insurance coverage or disability coverage, or just we need something to protect ourselves. The UFC will say no, and we'll say, okay, well, we're not fighting. You're not going to be able to earn revenue, and you've got a massive debt to pay back for the sale of the UFC. So that would require a fund to be created. And then Jake Paul and his team have said they were going to create a $50 million fund. And how it works is for the roster that is banking on their next fight to pay their bills, they would apply to receive some sort of income from the fund until the negotiations have come to fruition. They've gotten what they want. And then the fund would be paid back by those fighters with some sort of interest. Obviously, they're getting more money so that they can pay back that interest. And I think that they're doing it correctly. And I'm very excited to jump on that call with them in the next coming weeks and get this thing organized. Because again, I've said this to you, and I've said this to Cody, and I've said this to Curtis Blades, and I say this to every UFC fighter. I own multiple businesses. I pay my employees. And I use this example because I think it's the perfect example to use. I have this one employee I've had for 4 years now. And I started off at kind of market dollar hourly pay. And she became so valuable to me that I would have been willing to pay her double that.
Yeah.
But she never asked me for it. And as a business owner, I'm thinking of my bottom line. So I would just give her gradual raises. And it came to a point where she said, Parsi, you know, I've done X, Y, and Z for you. I have this other offer, and I'm going to take it unless you give me what I'm asking for. And with a big ass smile on my face, I said, absolutely, I'll give you what you want because you're valuable to me. And I think that's what needs to be done by the fighters, but they need to band together. The problem is, as a fighter, your job is to fight an opponent. And so that psychology is difficult to get everyone to band together. But I'm very hopeful someone like a Jake Paul who's got a massive platform. Now, he may not be liked by the masses, but I think he does that purposely. But I do think with his platform, he will be able to get the fighters to band together. In that scenario, let me ask you candidly, and we can edit this out if you don't want this to go on camera.
For sure.
Would you join that association?
If I'm being 100% honest, no.
No? Okay.
And the thing that makes it difficult is like, there's a lot of things that appear like early on. It's like, oh, cool. Like this can go this way, that can go that way. But then it's like, so we take fighters into consideration and things like that. Like look at like TJ Dillashaw, his last fight. This man walked into a title fight with the shoulder, one arm, literally dislocated one arm. Yeah. I talked earlier about like going into fights with injuries and that kind of thing. When it comes to like providing for your family, your livelihood, and that kind of thing, you're in a position where it's just like, that's a huge risk to go. And it's like the risk versus reward is like, you know what I mean? It's almost it's like,
yeah, I understand. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is the perfect scenario that we'd be creating for this association. Let's take that exact example. TJ Dillashaw very likely, he claims, I think I could have beat Aljo with one arm. Dog, no, you fucking can't. Aljo is the champion for a reason.
For sure.
Who did that very likely, a huge component was that money.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not knocking you for it. I probably would have done the same thing for that paycheck. But if the association was created, this is what we would have done differently. We would have had a disability insurance policy.
Yeah.
So TJ could file a claim, show the MRI to the insurance company. They would pay him pretty much what he would have gotten for that fight. Anyway, he could have rested, rehabbed, fought in 2023.
Yeah.
And, not had that performance.
For sure.
So the benefit of adding some sort of structure to the fighters, not only for disability, but health insurance. I know that you guys don't have health insurance. Yeah. These are all things that will eventually be done, no doubt about it. The question is when. Will it happen tomorrow or will it happen in 10 years? The sport is so freaking new.
For sure.
That, I understand. I want it to happen as soon as possible just because of the amount of respect I have for you for your fighters. But a lot of people who are just casual fans, they don't know what you guys go through. They have no idea. And so I'm not going to call it like a life passion project, but it's a very big deal. If I didn't have a business to run, I would be all into it
for sure.
But I've got, a wife and kids and business and bills to pay. So I can only do so much. This podcast is one of those reasons why it was created, was to kind of put emphasis on that. And to be honest, it takes maybe 3-4 hours a week of my time to do this podcast. So I love doing it. But if I were to get behind a fighters association, that would be 30-40 hours a week, which I frankly just don't have. But I'm very interested to know your thoughts on it. And
I mean, it's one of those great things. Like honestly, and I think the other part of it goes to it is that every fighter wants to see change, but everyone's willing to. Everyone's afraid of what that change looks like. You know what I mean? Where it's in order for something like that to work, in my opinion, it would have to be almost like a package deal that you can see something tangible for it to go. Like most recently, I think the last attempt for fighters get together for union was I think it was 10 ex-fighters that came together and did all this stuff. Yeah. And then people started diving in and looking into it a little bit deeper. Whoa, so-and-so had this going on and that going on, going on. Of course they want a union now. They need it. Like Brent's due next month. They need it. So it created that scenario. But I think in a perfect world scenario, the best, only way I see a union or association like that working to helping fighters, like a lot of the kinks and things have to be ironed out ahead of time, and then have this package layout. All right, this is what it looks like. It's gonna be XYZ included. It's gonna roll out in this year. These are people that are eligible. This is what that eligibility entitles you to, and everything else like that. Now it's one of those things. Okay, cool. Someone can feel more comfortable saying all right, I'm willing to take a step off this cliff to see what may come of it, as opposed to all right, cool. Let me go with it and see how it goes. You know what I mean? There's been especially over the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of different people coming into the mixed martial arts profession or field or whatever, with this different insight or the next best thing to help fighters. But very few people have withstood the test of time and actually showed hey, we're actually here to help you guys. We're doing the back work. We're helping you. We're helping you get this thing in order. As far as these are the key areas we're going to focus on. These are the things that are going to affect you long term, even after fighting is over with. And we're going to make that thing go into rotation, so to speak. And I think that's the base that's been lacking over the last couple of years, is trying to see what does that finished product look like. And even then, giving an opportunity, okay, cool. If this is what it looks like for an ideal association or union for fighters, let's give Bellator or UFC, whoever, an opportunity to actually look at it and see okay, cool. XYZ is good. We'll remove this. We'll add this. Make it work to where the fighter's actually getting benefit at the end of the day. But it's very difficult to get guys to bat on together, because to a certain extent, no one wants to jump off that cliff alone just yet. You know what I mean? You see 10 people jump a cliff, you kind of have more confidence. Oh, cool. It must be a safety net down there. I don't mind doing it. But you see one guy jump off the cliff, you're kind of man, that guy's crazy. You see what he just did? Like, no one's following that.
Yes.
But you see 20 people running off the cliff together full speed, like, hey, we're
Perfect.
going for it. Like,
Perfect
the 20
analogy.
guys behind him might be willing
Yeah.
to do so. Because they're like, all right, cool. Those guys did it and it's okay. Maybe we can do it next as well. But the hard part now is just like trying to figure out like, what does it look like? And actually like getting something like a little more concrete in place that's like, all right, I can get that. I mean, because there's been a lot of theories that have been discussed in over past years, but nothing concrete just yet has really come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, my thought process, and I dove into the numbers. Obviously, I'm a finance guy. I really dissected the numbers of the UFC revenue, the NBA and NFL
For
revenue. And the math speaks for itself. You guys are, I think you guys should be receiving close to triple. Every fighter, just imagine your most recent paycheck, triple that. I think that's how much you guys, the market value is there for you guys to earn.
No.
With that being said, you know, it's going to be a long road to get there, but I think you painted the perfect picture. If a few fighters, you know, tip their toes in the water, then jump in, then more will do so. But you got to make sure that the structure of the association is crystal clear, what you will gain from joining.
For sure.
Here are the promises that we're going to make for you. And, you know, I'm hopeful that within a certain amount of time that it will happen. You know, I think of it as like, you know, if you're an NBA player, even if you're a pretty shitty NBA player, but you've been playing for 7-8 years, you're set for life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you've been ranked for fucking ever. And, you know, I'm not sure if you're set for life.
Yeah.
But you should be set for generational wealth.
For sure.
Because of not only, you know, the amount of revenue that's out there that you guys are deserving of, but also, you know, you play basketball, you're going to have some knee issues and like maybe a fucked up back when you're 60.
For sure.
When you're 60 and a fighter, you're going to have issues with your body, your knee. It's just much more grueling on the body, not to mention the potential CTE components of it. So I just really hope that other people get on board. And I hope that the fighters, more importantly, get on board. But I know that, and it's in conversations like this that I'm realizing, it's important that we educate them as to why the association is so incredibly valuable. And for those fighters who are trying to come in the back door and say, I'll do it for half, we need to kick them the fuck out.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like going back to the jump off the cliff analogy, I think like an association needs to create that net where guys are comfortable like, all right, I'm gonna take the dive and see what happens. Not dive with take the jump and see what happens. Yeah, like we're you know what I mean? But like and I think that's one of those things that has to really come out and get ironed out. Like, you know, like you see guys go bungee jumping, like that cord has to like be tested time and time again to like, all right, cool. I feel comfortable going off the edge with this cord holding me up. And I feel like for any kind of union association work, that net has to be like that sound where it's like, all right, cool. From every angle, it's protected, and the fighter can feel comfortable going out there and trusting this thing to catch them when they hit it. Otherwise, it's like going to create this thing where it's kind of like, I don't know, man. It sounds good, but that edge seems pretty far still. Like, you know what I mean? Like it has that net has to be created for people to get that confidence to feel like, okay, cool. Let's take that leap and see what happens.
Nice. So you're 35. You want to fight in January. If that doesn't come to fruition, hopefully you get a fight booked. What is your, in an ideal world, what does your career look like over the next, you said 5 to 8 years? That would put you at 43. Do you really think that you'll be fighting at 43?
Realistically, if I'm fighting at 43, I've done a lot of things either really, really wrong or really, really well. But reality, you watch a guy like Glover to share that kind of thing. My biggest thing is the competition of it. Like, I don't want to show up to work or show up in a fight just for a paycheck. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the moment that I realize I'm not competitive, I'm not doing well, I'm not doing great anymore, then I have to start looking at other options. So, like, for me, looking at Glover to share, like, I'm like, okay, 35, 42 is an option. Like, the guy's fighting in 3 weeks for a UFC world title at 43 years old, 42 years old. So I'm like, he's competitive still. He can still do it. So that's like the marker for me to really like judge whether or not I can do this for very long. But the reality of it is, I've seen a lot of mixed martial arts fighters like 40, 41 be kind of the cap age or so. So being 35, like, and based off of the past fighters that came before me and the path they laid out, I realized that like that realistic number is probably like 5-6 years, not the 8 year that would probably hope for if I'm out there doing well still. But like, who knows? I mean, before Glover fought for a title and won, people thought he was crazy for doing it. And then he did it. It's like, oh, wow, Glover's the man. Like, go Glover. So you just never know with the sport and how it's going to turn out.
And he did really well in that last fight too. If it wasn't for that choke, he would have defended his title
for sure. Yeah, against a guy that was probably 15 years younger than him.
Yeah, that's crazy. But that's the experience in the ring, the cage presence that you guys have. Like, for example, I just sparred for the first time in my life a pro fighter, Carlos Calderon.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, he's a friend of mine, he's not trying to hurt me.
For sure.
But I've been training now consistently for about 4 or 5 years, and when they say there are levels to this, for me to go out, I wasn't able to land anything. And he was just peppering me. He even said, do whatever the fuck you want with me. I'm only going to box you. So imagine like the benefit that I had, and I couldn't land anything. So the experience that you have plays such a valuable role. Having the ability to go through. How many fights have you had? 36 total, or?
Yeah. Well, you do an amateur and combative service fight close to 50 fights, over 50 fights.
Do you know how, but for those who are watching, the amount of experience that you gain in every one fight is massive. Sure. So imagine that 50 times. Like, for example, in that D-Rod fight, maybe someone who's only fought 8 times in that second round would have folded.
For sure.
But your experience, you were able to go through the ups and downs of the fight and come up with the finish.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. I'm really excited to see what your next 5 years look like. Your coaches, Cody and Christian, let me even just backtrack here. So what does your normal week look like? Did you train, or are you training right now, even though you just come off a fairly tough fight?
Yeah, I'm going to the gym tonight. I actually do jiu-jitsu. That's the other thing about it. Like, when you stop loving the sport, it's like, all right, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. When I have to start telling myself like, hey, you have to go to the gym today, like that might be an indicator like the end is near kind of thing. But like when I'm excited to go to the mat, when I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get back on there, like those are all encouraging signs to keep doing it and keep moving forward. Because like martial arts will always be a part of me. The competitive edge will always be a part of me. But like, of course, it has to shift at some point or another. And I'm not content with like competing at the subpar level. I want to do it at the highest level against the best guys in the world, which is why I take those challenges that most people kind of shy away from. But like, it just, that's what you love doing. It's what you enjoy doing. Some guys might say like, all right, cool, I'm gonna take a vacation from work and I'm gonna go do some skiing or some golfing or what else may be. Martial arts is my skiing. It is my golfing. You know what I mean? Like, I get some time off, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
I posted my fight most recently. And on Facebook, my coach from college actually commented on it. Like, dude, like, you're one of the few guys it was a pleasure to work with, man. Like, I remember you being 19 years old and like getting an opportunity to coach you early on, and like it was just incredible. You were doing everything. You were in school full time. You were still in the Army National Guard. You just got back from deployment. You were working as an intern at the police department. You were doing all these different things, and you still showed up to practice. And I'm trying to get some of my guys just to show up when they live in the dorms next door. And that's just the joy of it. I actually enjoy doing this. Like, if I won a lottery tomorrow, I'll probably still try to fight on Tuesday. Like, I just love this sport that much or whatever. And that part is just not going away anytime soon.
I totally get that love. Like, I remember when I was 34, I had been training for 3 years, and I took a fight. And my wife, she was just my girlfriend at the time, she's like, "You're fucking crazy. Why are you fighting? What do you mean?" And she didn't understand. I love this.
For sure.
People don't understand. Like, Conor McGregor's a perfect example. The guy has more money than God knows.
For sure.
But he just loves the sport, and he wants to fight. And I respect that. I respect that about you as well. You're one of the few people that I've met in this world of fighting that has so much going on outside of the gym. You've got a successful construction company. You've got multiple rental properties. I have no doubt that when your career in fighting is over, that you're going to be massively, if not way more successful running your businesses. Can you kind of just talk to me a little bit about what the businesses entail, how you got into them, and what you think the future is going to hold for you?
Yeah. So when it came to real estate, it was more so like one of those things that like, early on it was a necessity. Like I moved all around when I was a kid. Like by the time I started 7th grade, I've been to 10 different schools. And it wasn't until I got like significantly older that I realized that like we weren't just moving because we enjoyed it. We were moving because we were getting kicked out. Like my mom was getting evicted time and time and time again. And like to be a single mother raising 6 kids in the early 2000s in New York City, that was something that like was almost impossible to do. So in the back of my mind, I always wanted to like get to a point like, all right, I don't want to get kicked out of the house again. I want to have somewhere that I can actually call home. And if my mom, sister, brother, whoever needs a place to go to, they can actually come here and no one's ever going to kick us out. So I always, that like was the first piece that got me interested in like what real estate would look like. And then from there, just kind of like, kept going further and further and further. My grandmother, for example, she literally was not even first generation American by like being born here, but she's like first generation in the sense that like she came over from Haiti and like settled in the States. And she pretty much worked like factory jobs, nanny jobs, all this kind of stuff to kind of make ends meet. But even while she was doing that, she found a way to like invest in herself and invest in her kids. Like even though she never had like the highest salary or whatever, she found a way to still buy real estate and provide for her children and ultimately provide for her grandchildren through real estate. So as I got older, I still wanted to like find that niche, find that piece of or that entry point where I can like get involved with real estate. In high school and middle school and like early on or whatever, I was fortunate and unfortunate where I would get in trouble in school, get suspended, and have to like go to work with my sister's father because I had no one else to kind of watch me at home, so to speak. So that kind of like let me like see the trade of construction, so to speak, and see like all the different things that it entailed. And I actually enjoyed it. I like doing it. I like putting things together. I like coming into an empty room and just seeing like a blank canvas. And by the time you walk out, it's like a dream house with something, or whatever else may be. I kind of fell in love with that process, and I kind of stayed with it ever since. I mean, in high school, I worked for my uncle, who was a real estate agent, and he would work all over Chicago, where he would do all different types of flips. And like my job work for him was like go in and like do all the demo work. And from then he was like, all right, we'll have you learn how to put up drywall. And then it was like, wow, I did that pretty good. Let's have you learn how to put a floor in. Like, you did that pretty good. Let's have you learn how to do this. So as a kid, it was cool because I was like actually able to like earn money, but like learn a skill as well. So fast forward to where I started competing on a regional circuit for mixed martial arts, and I was trying to catch my big break, so to speak. Construction was like my way of like earning ends meet while I was pursuing my passion of mixed martial arts. I mean, unlike many other sports, MMA is not like where you get this huge signing bonus. We're kind of like the struggling artists, where like you'll get a big bonus now and maybe you get another one in 5 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. Some guys in a couple of years. So like for me, it was really important to have something that allowed me to like be able to provide for myself and pursue my passion, so to speak. So early on, I was like literally getting up at like 6, 7 in the morning, going to a construction site, working all day, getting off in time to go to the gym, spend 3-4 hours there, and then repeating it 5-6 days a week. So by the time I got to the UFC, I was like, all right, cool. My first big check I get, I'm gonna buy a piece of property. And I didn't realize how difficult that was gonna actually be. Like I thought when I got to the UFC, I was like, cool, I made it. Like life is gonna be good. The first year in the UFC, I went 1-2. I had one international fight, and my first fight, I had like all the different fees and everything else I had to worry about. I didn't understand like coaching fees. I didn't understand taxes. I didn't understand being able to like spread this like quote unquote big check out for a long period of time. I didn't understand all of that. So by the end of the year, I was like, damn, I'm broke again. Like I just had like my first year in UFC, and like I'm broke and I might get cut even. So from there, I was like, man, this sucks. Like I worked so hard to get here, and I'm literally potentially about to lose it. Like I'm about to lose it all, so to speak. So I was like, I got to do something better or something different to kind of like ease the stress that goes with training, where I can like spend more time in the gym and more folks in the gym, whatever. So I remember like telling myself like, all right, cool. This is your make it or break it moment. So like I put all the extra stuff I'll do on the side and kind of put all my eggs in a basket, so to speak, to like make it happen in my UFC career. Like my first year I went 1-2. After that, I had an opportunity to fight again the following year. And from there, I went on a 7-fight win streak, got ranked, and never looked back ever since. But with that being the path I had to take, I realized that like I also had to do something to provide for those rainy days as well. And for me, it was real estate again. I was like, I have to get involved in real estate some way, somehow. So the first UFC bonus I got, I was like, cool, I'm taking it and I'm buying a piece of property. And I immediately did that. And it was cool because it kind of like, I didn't know how my real estate portfolio was going to grow. I didn't know where it was going to end up. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I knew I at least had to get that first property started. So when I first got that one, I was like, all right, how do I leverage this first piece of property to get like more or reduce my income or my expenses and get another one? Yeah. So like, I was like, okay, let me rent out the rooms. So I bought my first house. It was a 5-bedroom, 2-bedroom house. And at the time I was like 26, 25 years old. And I just rented out every single room in the house. I had one room for myself and rented out every other room in the house. And it paid for the house. It gave me a little extra. And when I got like to the point that, oh, I'm ready to buy the next house, I did the same thing. I rented out my room in that house and moved on to another house and kind of rinse and repeat. I had a couple roommates in there. We were living together, minimizing my expenses and maximizing what I'll be able to get as far as like getting approved for another property or whatever. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again until I got married. And I was just like, okay, cool. This is where I draw the line. I'm not going to be married. I'm not going to be married to have roommates. I just can't do it. So at that point, I was like, all right, cool. Let me go ahead and get my actual first property with my fiance or whatever back then, and we were able to get that. But fortunate enough, my first 2 properties that I bought before the third one, I was able to leverage and get a 4th one as well because. Same thing. I would move out, rent out the whole house. I'd move out, rent out the whole house. So at that point, I was able to get 3 properties with minimal income because I was able to show income from the rental properties. From the revenue that they were creating. And once I got married, I was like, all right, I'm not going back to the whole roommate situation again. I was like, how do I still make this work? And I just kept like taking my UFC earnings and buying more property. So my UFC earnings, buying more property. So much to the point that I was able to like set myself up with a pretty decent sized portfolio where it's like, cool, this is a good safety net to fall back on when times get tough or whatever else it may be. And like, I'm very fortunate now to where I'm at in my career where like I can go out and win a fight on Saturday and be in my realtor's office on Monday. Like, hey, where's this property we're buying now? I'm ready for the next one. And it's a very fortunate place to find myself. But it's just cool to have something tangible to hold on to and be able to pass on to my kids one day. That was a result from my fighting career.
Nice. How many properties do you have now?
Total right now, I have 7 different properties that I own.
Good for you, my friend. Good for you. I've got 2 and I could barely, stay afloat with these 2. But I bought a property right next to the gym, actually. It's just a little small rental. Still needs some work. And I was thinking of, for a second, I was thinking of renting it out to the fighters. And then I was like, no. And then I spoke to Rich about it. And he said, Neil does that. Neil rents it out to fighters. How is that? Because I would think fighters probably don't take the best care of the house. Are they good tenants?
And that was the thing that like, and the crazy part is like, I remember going to the UFC PI when it first opened 5-6 years ago, and they had a guest speaker come in. They had Kobe Bryant, all these other guys come in for like, what does it look like to invest and everything else like that. And I remember like being backstage having a conversation with Kobe Bryant, and I'm like, okay, I'm like mentally preparing myself. Like it's about to be like this whole mama mentality spiel and everything else like that about like he's gonna give us a young athlete. And he's like telling us about investing. And I'm just like, wait, what? Like, how do you want me to invest, dude? Like like you signed a multi-million-dollar contract out of high school. Like I'm a struggling fighter trying to like figure out where my next like fight's going to be kind of thing. I don't invest the same way you do. Or it's a night and day difference or whatever. So like early on, I was like, all right, I already know that are other teammates that are in the same boat that I'm in as far as like trying to find a decent place to stay and like that's like affordable. Sure. So for me, renting out to fighters was kind of like not necessarily a necessity, but a niche that I was a part of where I was training with these guys day to day. So like I knew when they were coming in and out. I knew what their schedule was. I knew that like they weren't going to do any kind of crazy parties or anything like that when I was trying to come home and rest for training because we all had the same training schedule, the same training time, the same everything else like that. So for the most part, a majority of the guys that I rented to were great tenants. The downside is the guys that slouch off in training are also the terrible tenants you have at the house. We definitely had a few of those where guys were just like, man, just complete slobs. They just would not take care of themselves or like look out for the group as a whole. They were so like self-centered and focused on themselves that they made terrible tenants. They would pay rent late or they felt like it's like, all right, whatever. Like you're my buddy, you're my pal. If I pay you 5 days late, no big deal. Like, no, man, like I have a mortgage to pay still. I need you to pay on time because I have to pay the bank on time. So that became a difficult situation for a few guys where it's just like, all right, I can't be the nice guy much longer. I can't be the teammate much longer. I have to like put my foot down and actually have like a particular amount of a particular type of tenant or fighter I can rent to. And that's the hard part. Just kind of like feel out who is going to be a responsible, quote unquote, fighter / tenant for you.
Do you have a property manager? Do you do all yourself?
No, fortunately, I'm doing it all myself now. I mean, it may get to the point now as I keep acquiring more properties that I do have to get a property manager, but it's been pretty fortunate over the last couple of years that like I had minimal issues as far as like tenants and damage and finding tenants and that kind of thing. But like I said, as I get more and more in depth into it, get more and more properties, more and more multi-family units, I'm going to have to eventually get a property manager. But so far, I've been able to do it all myself.
Nice. 7 units is awesome, man. Yeah, 7 units is awesome. You know, those 30-year fixed, you're going to have those paid off. That's just going to be cash flow. You probably are cash flowing on them already. Yeah. But you're not going to have the bank to pay back by then. So and we talked about this off air as well, but you mentioned you don't have a ton of money to invest. I think that is a common misconception. Investing, in my opinion, should just be kind of a habit, regardless of how much money you have. For sure. You should take a sliver of it and invest it because you're going to, you know, the compound interest or however the investment's going to do well for you. So, you know, as a financial advisor, I sit down with, now my clients are all kind of high net worth, but with starting out, you know, I would have clients who were nurses making 80 grand a year. They would retire at 60 and they would be so wealthy because of the fact that they wouldn't spend a ton of money. They would tuck away money for themselves. And then just being a nurse, you just are given tremendous retirement benefits. For sure. And then I would have clients who were literal brain surgeons making $2.5 million a year. And they were 65 and they were broke. I mean, they had assets, but their expenses were so outrageous. You know, a divorce here, you know, high, you know, car payment here, a couple unnecessary vacation homes. For sure. And they would sit down with me and they would say, you know, I want to retire next year. And I would say, Doug, you can't ever retire, you know? So I use that story because I think it's very important to know that regardless of how much money you have, just get in the habit of tucking away. It doesn't have to be real estate. I think real estate is one of the best investments because of all the tax benefits, leverage, but it doesn't have to be. I don't love real estate, even though I think it's one of the best. It's just not for me. Yeah. I'm more of a business purchaser, a stock market guy. For sure. Whoever's listening to this, whatever it may be, maybe it's just investing in yourself. Maybe it's picking up a new skill, a new habit, or investing in something that you know, but just get in the habit of not spending all your money, not, you know, going out buying flashy shit. All that stuff is a waste. Yeah. So I use you as like the perfect example because you're set. I mean, you're going to be making money for the next 5 years, really good money. For sure. You're going to be buying properties. Those properties are going to be paid off. You've got your construction business. You're going to have a beautiful life for perpetuity. Your kids are going to be able to benefit from that as well. Some people may not know this, but real estate is one of those investments. Once you pass away, your kids get the step up in basis. For sure. So there's no tax implications on them. I'm a proponent of never selling real estate, but just obviously there's certain situations in which you got to sell or 1031 exchange. For sure. But I just think just being, you know, a dynasty holder of real estate assets, it's always going to go up and you're always going to be able to take money out when you need, cash out, refi, whatever. Yeah. So good for you, I'll say. Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing about it too, because like the more you educate yourself with like whatever investment you is, like the education piece is the biggest part. Like when if you just take like a couple of hours a week, like maybe even 2 hours a week, sure. and then find whatever niche it is that you're into. Like if you're a guy that's into stock, like spend a couple of hours a week looking into how the stocks work for you. If real estate is your thing, spend a couple of hours a week seeing how that works for you. And that education allows you to find a way to make it work for yourself. Like a lot of the young fighters that come to the team or whatever, like one of the biggest things I try to get them to do is like, hey, yeah, buy a piece of property as soon as you can. And for me, I make it a necessity for them because they're already doing it anyway. They're already living somewhere where it's like they already have either a roommate or
paying a ridiculous amount of rent to like just like exist. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you already have a roommate, why not be the person that benefits from having a roommate? You know what I mean? Like if you and your roommate are coming together and paying rent at $2,400 a month, why not get a mortgage at $2,400 a month? And you're essentially paying half that because your roommate's putting the other piece in there. And it's something that goes into your future. And you can actually hold on to that asset long after you're done fighting. Let's say you are a fighter who moved here from Texas and you're going to be in Colorado for the next couple of years in order to pursue your career and get the most out of it. And when you first move here, you're renting, but you have the means of buying a place. Go ahead and buy that place. And then as you're living here and you're holding on to that piece of property, when it comes time for you to move on to whatever is next, you can either hold on to it, rent it out all the way, or sell it, or even better, like have the next fighter take your spot, sort of thing. And this is something that I've seen over and over and over again. Like in the Army, you would see it in deployments where when you first get into a new country or new setting, you had the old unit show the new unit the ropes, so to speak. You kind of show them like, hey, this is where you go to get this is how you do that, this is how you interact. And one of the things that would happen is like the new soldiers coming in would kind of buy stuff from the old soldiers. So like you get inside, right? Get into wherever you're going. And like the soldiers out there for 12 months prior to you, they acquired all this stuff that they don't want to take back with them. Where it's like, yeah, man, I had a TV in my bunk, I had a PlayStation in my bunk. I'm here to go back home now. It's all my stuff. I don't need this. So you just buy it from the fighter that's already there. And when it comes to like real estate, where else may be, it's still that leverage that you can use at the end of it. So like if you're out in Colorado for a bit and it's time to go back home and move on to the next thing, go ahead and like slide someone else in that slot. Like, hey, you know what? I'm going to move myself in a situation, put this person in a situation, but yet I'm still making money at the end of the day off of that transaction or that switch.
100%. So are you planning to stay in Colorado even past, because I know you've moved from New York to Chicago. Now you're in Colorado. Do you plan to stay here? Or
Chicago or Colorado is kind of home for me now, just because like my kids were born here, my wife's family's here, and that kind of thing. So for like the family structure of it, I think Colorado will be the place I end up being for a while. I mean, unless something drastically changes and I finally make my way out to the ocean, but I think Colorado will be home for a while for me.
Nice. Yeah, I came from the ocean. I love Colorado. I have these two really good buddies of mine, and we're in a group chat, and we always just talk so much shit because they're from LA, where I grew up, and having moved to Colorado, so being an LA guy my entire life, I thought that California was the best place to live, and for a certain person, it probably is. You've got tremendous weather, you've got obviously the ocean, which I absolutely love. I'm a beach bum. But for someone like me who moved, who, is not a multi-millionaire. And so, finances are very important.
For sure.
I was able to get, if you were to take this house, pick it up and move it to where I wanted to live in California, it's triple the fucking price. My nanny is much more expensive in California. My gas is much more expensive. And so our group chat always consists of us talking shit. So I filled up my gas today. I'm like, I filled up my V8 for $75, bitch, and like that same thing would cost them $130. But
for sure,
I don't know that I will move back to California because I'm just very comfortable here. Colorado is a badass place to live, man. And you don't really there's no promotion of it, right? So when I moved here, I always look back and I tell my friends, you guys don't know what you're missing. Obviously you got the weather and the ocean, but you're always complaining about making that mortgage payment, which is triple or quadruple what it could be here.
For sure.
Do you ever see yourself leaving to go to the ocean in California or just anywhere?
Just anywhere with a beach necessary. Like even like my mom now, for example, she's getting to the age of like retirement, and she was considering like, oh man, I want to move to Dominican Republic. Like it's the cost of living there is so much cheaper, and I can live like this, live like that. Like I'll even buy a house there. And I was like, Mom, like it wouldn't make sense for you to like just dump all your like assets to buying a property there and then have to worry about like all the stuff that comes with it as far as like maintenance and upkeep and all the other stuff. Especially if you're only wanting to be there for 6 months at a time. I was like, just use a quarter of what you'll spend to buy something out there and buy property out here. and then the cash flow you make off of property right here would pay for you to go live somewhere else, so to speak. So to give you an example, she was looking at property that's like $300,000 just off the beach. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo and that kind of thing. Like, yeah, but you can rent the same thing for $1,200 a month, and you're only going to be there for 6 months out of the year. Get a property that's going to net you that same kind of profit where you can like take that money and go live somewhere else. So if I do it in a movie somewhere else and have to figure out the cost of living, I'm hoping that the investment I made here in Colorado kind of offset whatever it is that I'm going to be paying somewhere else. So I'm
sure they will.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that, you get these paychecks, you call your realtor. Obviously, if you're following the real estate market, this is a fucked up situation with rates so high and prices haven't come down as much. Are you still willing to pull the trigger right now?
Yeah. So one of the cool things about real estate, and this is where it comes down to like everyone doing their own research and educating themselves, that kind of thing. There's so many different real estate markets where there's a Colorado market, there's a California market, and there's a New York City market, which is even crazier than both of those places. But then there's also those places in between that there's still potential to make a pretty good return on your investment on. Like if I'm not too into stocks, I just know from what my financial advisor told me in the past what was considered a good return on investment, whatever. Like if I put a chunk of money away and I'm able to make 6 to 8% return on my investment per year, whatever, that's a pretty good return. What most people would say. But if I can take that same amount of money and put it into real estate, because I did the research and found out different areas or whatever, if I can take that same amount of money and put it into another market that may not necessarily be where I live, but still brings the return that I want, where it's like 10%, 12% of a yearly return off that investment, then you're still able to make out well with it. So like even right now, the rates are going high, where for me to go out and get another mortgage, it wouldn't make sense because it'll cut my cash flow in half. So if I were to buy a property in Colorado right now, the median price for a home in Denver metro area is like $500,000 to $600,000 or so. So with that being said, with today's interest rates, that means I would have to my mortgage on that would be roughly $2,800 to $3,000 a month, and then I have to turn around and rent that place for at least $3,000 to $3,500 a month to just make $100 a month on there. And that's a lot of high numbers to make such a low return on there, where I can literally take 100,000, put it in a separate market, and out the 100,000, I'm able to make 10% or to 15% on return per month because I bought it outright cash. I don't have a bank that I have to pay interest or anything else like that. And the tenants pay me directly. After I pay my taxes and insurance, that's all cash flow that I'm able to come away with. Where if I were to worry about what the market was doing or what the interest they were doing, it would kind of like cripple me or make me hesitant to buy. But because I'm able to look at different markets and educate myself on what's going on in different cities and states and things like that, I can still find those deals that make sense to go ahead and purchase and get that
Which
return.
states are you looking at?
So right now, Illinois has been a big state for me, just because like the little bit of insight as far as like living there for a while, having connections with people who can like kind of do the work or management where I don't have to necessarily be hands on or staying over it to watch, where you can't put a team together to take care of it for you, where you don't have to be as involved with it.
So you're buying like little fixtures in Illinois for roughly $100,000.
Yeah, roughly $100,000, and then like and this is where the education comes with, because there's so many different ways to like. There are. Like I get excited about it,
because I'm a big leverage guy. I don't like putting all my cash into something because of exactly that, the rate of return. If I can leverage my money, I'll make more of it, especially with the rates being low. So I'm very fascinated of your investment style. Not to say that it's right or wrong. It's just different.
Just different for everyone out there. Like you watch a guy like Trump. Trump's been involved with real estate for years, you know what I mean? Decades. And he's been doing very well at it. And then like there are different things that come out there as to like the amount that he may pay for taxes or may not pay for taxes, that kind of thing. And you ask yourself, like, you can look at it two ways. Some people say, like, hey, that's BS. How is this millionaire only paying $800 in taxes a year, and I'm over here paying $50,000, $60,000 a year in tax? That's not fair. Like, why does he get away with that? Or you look at it and like, wait, how?
Yeah.
How is he allowed to pay that much in taxes and I have to pay this other amount or whatever? And you kind of dive into it a bit more, ask questions, surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable about that kind of thing. It's like talk to a CPA, talk to an accountant, figure out like, okay, cool. What are different tax deductions that I can make for investment, that kind of thing, where I can like leverage my money rather than just having it go away to something else. So like after you max out your IRAs and that kind of stuff, it's like, okay, cool. What else do I do with my money that I can actually have it like work for me in the future? Like, yeah, cool. To me, that new Range Rover looks nice, but that new Range Rover is going to break down in 10 years. I have nothing to show for it. So how do I leverage my money where like I can actually have someone else pay for my Range Rover if I want a Range Rover. I have someone else pay for that vacation home if I want that vacation home, and not necessarily come out of pocket over and over and over again and not have any assets to show for it at the end of the day.
As a financial advisor sitting down talking to you, it's like a magical hearing you talk like this, because it's so fucking crucial. It's so important. Everything that you're saying are pretty much things I regurgitate to certain clients who just don't have the same attitude that you and I do. And I've heard from people at the gym that you tell other fighters and you're trying to teach this to them. And I think it's so important. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that Range Rover will be purchased before the piece of property.
For sure.
And people just need to realize that the consequences of that in 30 years are drastic.
Yeah.
You know, that's a $100,000 purchase that will be worth $5,000 in 10 years. That 100,000 will be worth $1 million in 10 years. So no, maybe not 10 years, but just a different way to look at things.
For sure.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been cool because it's like different ways to brag in there. Like I remember when I first moved to Colorado, for example, either the generation before me in fighters, so to speak, a few of them were flashy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, check out this new BMW I got, or whatever. And it was their thing. But like, I love going to practice now where like my team's like, hey, dude, I just picked up another property. I'm like,
nice.
Hell yeah, dude, let's get another one. That's like a great conversation 100%. To have. You get to see like these guys do it over and over and over that way. Because unfortunately, like with mixed martial arts and where we are right now, we're very far from being set up for life based off of the work we put in our actual sport. But with that being said, like it still would suck to see us be in a position where it's like, all right, cool. You just fought for 10 years. You beat your body to the bone, but now you have to go get an actual job to provide for your family. Even after that, like, you know what I mean? It's just a terrible thing to see for a lot of guys. And I've seen that with the generation before me where a few guys were fortunate enough to like open up gyms and that kind of thing to provide for themselves. But at the end of the day, how many gyms can we open? If all my current teammates were planning on retiring and opening up gyms, I mean, we'll all be across the street from each other with a gym. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to like look outside the box and find different ways of investing and have these conversations with people like yourself who are have different outlooks on like what does it look like to invest. Where it's like you don't need that huge $100,000 purse to invest yet. You can actually do it with 5,000. You know what I mean? And then having someone show what that looks like, I think goes a long way.
100%. Awesome, man. This has been an awesome conversation outside of just fighting. It's so nice to actually meet you. So thank you so much for coming. Really do appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching, we would really appreciate if you like, subscribe, and share the video. It will really help grow the channel. And that's what we're trying to do. So again, thank you so much, Neil. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
We'll have you on soon. Hopefully after the Rio card. Once you fight and beat Gilbert Burns, you'll come back.
For sure. So the new property I bought after that winning.
Awesome. Cheers, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, dude, thank you.